VRX, how virtual therapeutics will revolutionize medicine.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you today and to speak about our research using virtual reality in clinical practice. I'm going to get us started with my first slide, which is a picture of me with one of our patients at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center who have used virtual reality. And we've now used VR in over 3,000 patients at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. And today I'm going to briefly share with you some of the stories of our clinical applications of VR and my own personal experiences going through this process as a physician, learning how VR can augment traditional medical therapies. Now we've, as I said, used virtual reality in many different patients, and because this is a visual art, I'm going to start with a few pictures. This is a picture of a young man who's graciously allowed us to use this image, who has sickle cell anemia. And moments before we took this picture, he was in the midst of a very painful experience from sickle cell anemia. But at this moment, he's in virtual reality in a helicopter flying over fjords in Iceland. And you can just see the expression on his face that for the moment anyway, his experience has changed. This is another one of our patients who has liver disease. And at this moment, she is in Hawaii, although she's of course in a hospital bed and has been experiencing a great deal of pain. And in a few minutes, I'm going to show you some brief videos of both of these patients using virtual reality. Now, we've been using a variety of different virtual reality headsets, and I hadn't even, frankly, heard of virtual reality until about 6 years ago when Walter Greenleaf, who is a professor at Stanford, came into my office and he introduced me to virtual reality. And he put a VR headset on my face, and this is the first thing that I saw. All of a sudden, a conference room turned into this scene, and this is my first-person view of being on a window washer rig going up the side of a 50-story building. And I started to realize that I was getting a little bit scared and was a little short of breath and getting a little anxious. And this is me looking around and noticing all these details being 50 floors up over this rotary down below with these cars driving around. And I noticed the sunlight and I noticed the details like the paint splattered on the floor. I was getting a little bit anxious, but at least I felt confident that that railing was there and I was secure. And just as I was feeling confident, they threw the railing right off of the window washer rig. I got anxious and they said, go ahead and jump off that building. And I thought, no way, I'm not going to jump off this building. I'm going to die. And they said, well, you know that you're not really standing on the side of a building. And I said, well, you know, I think I know that, but my brain isn't convinced. My brain thinks that I'm actually about to die. And the only way I was able to do it is I had to cheat. I looked through the headset and I could see the carpet, just a little bit of carpet down below. And that was enough to break the illusion and give me enough confidence to take a baby step off of that building and fall 50 stories all the way down to my virtual death. And then everything turned white. And I thought, oh my God, this technology can hijack your brain. And it could be used for evil, but maybe we can also use it for good. Maybe we can use it to take advantage of this capacity to change the mind and change consciousness, but for positive reasons. Now, that's the first time that I died in virtual reality. Now I want to tell you the story of the second time that I died in virtual reality. It was at the University of Barcelona, where I visited Professor Mel Slater. And he is a professor of virtual reality. And he's been doing research for many years on the impact of virtual reality on human consciousness. And what he did is he put me in this room, which is a nondescript room with black curtains, and there's a chair and a coffee table. And they asked me to sit down in that chair and kick my feet up on the coffee table. And there I am with some motion sensors on my ankles and on my wrists. And that's Dr. Slater's postdoc, Ramon Oliva, who is about to put a headset over my head. And when he does, this black room turns into this sort of beautiful looking, rather nice, living room where you can see a chandelier and you can see some furniture and you can see some really nice stuff. And as I'm looking around, I noticed that those are some legs. Those look like my legs. And the next thing they asked me to do is to start moving my legs around on the table. So they asked me to start moving my legs around, and they drew these blue lines and asked me to trace out the lines. And as I moved in perfect synchrony, these legs moved. And I started to wonder, whose legs are those? Are those my legs? Because they sure look like my legs and they move like my legs. But I was thinking that somewhere in this room, there was a computer running thousands of lines of code that was convincing my brain that that was my body. Now, the next thing he did is he dropped these balls from the ceiling. And as the ball hit my body, I can physically feel it because there was a vibration motor in the suit that I was wearing. And it literally felt like I was now this body. My brain had achieved full body ownership, as Professor Slater calls it. Now, what happened next is really even hard for me to describe in words. I'll do my best to describe it, showing you this picture, but it's hard to describe. What happened next is all of a sudden I detached from my body. I physically separated from my body and started to float up slowly to the ceiling. Those balls followed me and I can still feel them, but I looked down at that body that I had just occupied and I noticed that it wasn't moving anymore. It was motionless, it was vacant. I had had a complete out-of-body experience. I had died. And I'll show it to you again because it's so astonishing to have actually felt having this out-of-body experience. And I realized that passing away, dying, doesn't need to be a catastrophic thing. It could actually be kind of mystical, almost a spiritual event. Now, Dr. Slater has studied this and has published this paper, A Virtual Out-of-Body Experience Reduces Fear of Death. And in this study, he looked to see if people who were exposed to this virtual reality experience had a lower fear of death. And he was able to demonstrate in the study that people did have a lower fear of death. Now, I'm still afraid of dying, but having gone through this experience, it made me rethink what death is like and that it doesn't need to be catastrophic. So these two stories that I start with emphasize that VR is a tool that profoundly modifies our perception of the world around us and our perception of the world within us. And if we can use it to recalibrate unhealthy perceptions, then VR can become a radical new therapy, potentially to improve quality of life as well. Now, this is an example of how we've been doing this. What I'm showing you here is a 360-degree video of dolphins swimming. And when we put this in a headset, you can feel like you're with these dolphins. You can hear the music, hopefully, behind my voice. And what we do with patients who are in the hospital is we give this to them so they feel like they have been separated from the hospital. I had a patient, for example, with severe abdominal pain, and she couldn't really figure out what the reason was. And the patient had many tests and CT scans and lab tests, and nobody knew exactly why she had pain. So we put this headset on her, and after about 4 minutes of silence, she began to cry. And I asked her, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Yeah, I am." And I said, "Well, what's wrong?" She said, "I think I know why I have this pain." I said, "Really? Tell me more." And she said, "I think it's because of my brother." She said, "My brother died of stomach cancer, and I feel like I'm going to die that way too." And I said, "But you know, we've looked in your stomach and you don't have cancer in your stomach." And she said, "I know that. I keep hearing you guys say that, but I've not been willing to accept it. But these dolphins, they're telling me I need to move on with my life. I need to accept it." She said, a year of therapy, and I never would have come to this conclusion. I thought that's amazing. And this is an example of how being in virtual reality can change the way you think, even if it's just long enough for you to have new insights about your own mind and about your own body. So what's happening in the brain in somebody, for example, who has anxiety, or in this case, who has pain? What you're looking at here is a famous study from Hunter Hoffman at the University of Washington in the US, who is experimenting with virtual reality and pain. And what you're looking at is a functional MRI scan of the brain of a research subject who on the left is experiencing pain, and on the right is experiencing pain but with virtual reality. And you can see the difference. On the left, there's this yellow, almost like a fire of signals in the brain. On the right, there's fewer signals. But it's not just that there are fewer signals, it's also the location of those signals. The signals on the left are up in the sensory cortex, where you feel the severity of the pain, but also in the middle of the brain, which is in the limbic system. That's the emotional center. So it appears that virtual reality reduces both the physical aspect of pain and the emotional aspect of pain. And so we know that's important because there are two components of pain. Buddha called this the two arrows of pain. He said the first arrow is when you get hit with an arrow and it hurts, but the second arrow is the self-inflicted wound. This is when you look at the first arrow and you worry that you're going to die. You worry about what it means for your future. That's the emotional component of the pain. And it's important because virtual reality, it looks like, can reduce both types of pain. These are two studies that demonstrate that. On the left is a study of people with severe burn injuries undergoing dressing changes of their burn wounds. And on the right is a study of women undergoing childbirth. And in both cases, they're randomized to either receive virtual reality or not to receive virtual reality. And in both cases, use of virtual reality reduced both the worst pain, but also the time spent thinking about pain and the unpleasantness of the pain. Interesting, in this burn study, people in virtual reality reported having more fun during a dressing change, which is a curious outcome. Same thing over here, less time spent thinking about the pain and the unpleasantness. So both the sensory, cognitive, and the affective components of pain were reduced with virtual reality. And this is a study that our group published that was led by Melissa Wong and Kim Gregory from our obstetrics group, again demonstrating larger reductions in pain in people randomized to a Lamaze style of virtual reality during childbirth compared to a control group. So we've been using virtual reality at Cedars-Sinai. This is our hospital. It's the largest hospital in the Western United States. And if you go inside into a room like this, it's a lovely room, but all day long our patients are looking up at the ceiling like this. Every so often somebody like me comes by and then disappears and comes back again, maybe not smiling. This is what life is like in the hospital room. So we've been evaluating how can we do better than that. Maybe we can allow people to escape the four walls of the hospital to go to fantastical destinations, like to be underwater or to be swimming with fish or reaching out here for a blue whale that's coming across her visual field. And we've been talking with our patients and learning from them about what works and what doesn't work. And we've been learning that some patients have very specific ideas of how to interact with this technology or where they want to travel to. Some people, for example, would love to go to Antarctica. I want to go to Hawaii or go into an ice cave or maybe on a safari. So we've been experimenting with different destinations for our patients. Now, this is an example, very briefly, of two of our patients using virtual reality. So we'll see if it helps with the pain or not. Mm-hmm. You'll tell us.
Yes.
And we'll go from there. Okay, any questions about that?
Pull that down over your eyes now.
Should load up.
Whoa.
What do you see?
Horses?
Yep, okay. And over the bridge. Is that working?
Yes.
What's happening now?
The helicopter, waterfalls.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been to Iceland?
No.
With the music and everything, it's real peaceful. Oh, it's people. Hey. Oh, cool.
So what'd you think?
It's pretty relaxing.
Uh-huh.
Especially with the music and everything, and then the different scenery. Like, it was just one part where it was like a waterfall. You're sitting in a cave,
right?
And it's a waterfall right next to you. Almost made me forget I was here. Like, cause you're there.
Right.
It's like you're really there. You're hearing the waterfall, and everything is like you look around, and it's the whole scenery.
Right.
It's like you're immersed in it.
How did it make you feel?
Relaxed. Very relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't thinking about the pain.
You weren't?
No, I wasn't.
Really?
I was just thinking about being there
Uh-huh.
and having a good time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
We'll let Dr. Herman know.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Good, okay.
Yes, but I really did like it. I enjoyed it really much.
Excellent.
Thank you so much
Oh,
for
you're welcome.
picking me.
So there's really no substitute from just hearing from our patients, but we decided we needed to do more research on this as well. And this is an example of a study where we looked at 140 patients who got randomized in the hospital, either to a virtual reality library where they could experience many different virtual worlds, or they were randomized to watch a health and wellness relaxation channel on the television set in their hospital room. And when we compared them over their hospital stay, we found that those in the virtual reality arm had a larger drop in pain compared to those who were randomized to the television arm. And it was especially notable in the patients with the highest amount of pain, with scores of 8, 9, or 10. There we found VR was especially effective for their pain. These are examples of some of the visualizations that we're using now in our patients. The software has become extremely sophisticated and beautiful. So I could talk for quite a lot longer about many different applications of virtual reality. Unfortunately, I don't have time, and I'm going to finish up my talk now. But these are some examples, and I cover all of these on our website. This is our website, virtualmedicine.org. and virtualmedicine.health, where you can explore more, see more videos, and see our research. And I'm also very excited to announce the release of my new book. It's called VRX, How Virtual Therapeutics Will Revolutionize Medicine. This is available now for pre-order and will be available on October 6th. This is a review of all of the science of virtual reality for medicine, with stories from all of our patients from around the world, in the North America and Asia and Europe and all over the world, using virtual reality. So with that, I want to thank you very much for your attention and for the opportunity to present with you today. If you are interested, you can follow me on our Virtual Medicine Conference Twitter account, or my personal Twitter account, where I very frequently will post about virtual reality in medicine. And thanks to the organizers again for the opportunity to speak with you today as we go through a list of all the different people who have contributed to our research at Cedars-Sinai. So thank you again very much, and I appreciate the invitation.